agent outreach, and Steve, you've got some inbound stuff coming online eventually. So Joe, I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be running, PPL, PPC maybe as well. Any others that, like, is anybody doing direct mail, for example, or?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just want to get an idea about what inbound channel we're talking about, and then I've got kind of a few, I guess, topics or principles, I guess, to just consider as we're considering these leads that are coming in. By nature, they're less, like, for example, if we're doing an outbound strategy like agent outreach, for example, let's say we put our leads in, we tag them, we update lead sources, we can do a bunch of stuff like before getting outreach initiated. Inbound is kind of a bit of a different animal where we really want to like conceptualize each lead flow system, as I call them, and make it so that, okay, when a Facebook lead comes in, we know that we've updated the lead source to Facebook and we've updated the campaign name maybe as well by the nature of like how it came in. So opposed to these outbound ones where it's a little bit more like, get your stuff together, get it organized, and then activate something. This is more of get your ducks in a row before getting the leads in the system, and then the way the leads come into the system will be, impactful on how we handle those. So I think this will make a lot more sense when I start sharing my screen in a second. But does anybody have anything that you want to kind of, not to derail it, but any related questions that you want to mention while I'm getting rolling here, just to see if I can tie it in? If not,
Good.
then
Looking forward to seeing where you go. I learn every time I just observe with you here, Rick.
that's sweet. Yeah, I got a couple things in mind that I think will drive a few points home. A big one is smart lists. So, I'm gonna show you guys the actual inbound lead workflow that pulls in, like I said, all these different channels and helps you control your lead sources for KPI tracking and things like that. But then I'll show you how we can use that workflow to build our targeted smart lists and things like that. So that'll be a big component here because I feel like a lot of my calls with you guys is I usually spend about 20 minutes trying to drive home the point of you should be using smart lists more than pipeline views. So there's a really critical reason why that's possible or why that's true, and I'm sure I've even explained it to most of you already, but that'll relate into this topic as well. So I'm going to share my screen now and go to automation on the side here. We've got folders of automations, and one of the folders is called lead flow system, direct to seller inbound. This folder just houses one lead or one workflow, but it's only one workflow because of the fact that it's so flexible that we can manage multiple different lead sources within the one campaign. By the way, anybody who watches this live or the recording later, if you want this workflow and you don't have it, maybe you signed up months and months and months ago, then let me know and we can roll this in for you. Jack, I think you probably have something similar to this, but it's likely a little bit more developed than the one you have. So what we're looking at is a workflow, and a workflow consists of at least one trigger and then sequential actions from top down. And as you see this split right here, it's sequential, but there's ways to affect the flow. We can guide it down certain branches based on logic. So letting TJ get in here as well. Okay, so we've got all these different lead sources, and these are by no means all of them. A good example is one that's missing here that people have really been, having some good success with lately is a PPL source called property leads. So if I want to add a new trigger, I'm just going to click here, and let's say we want to add in property leads as an option. We're going to ramp up a new property leads campaign. We're going to set up a Zapier integration and pass a webhook to them so that each time they submit a lead on your behalf, they very likely text and email that lead to you already. Maybe they drop it into a Google Sheet. But if we give them what's called a webhook URL, and have them execute that webhook when the lead is generated for you, we can have that contact come into the system with a particular tag. So I don't really want to get off of this platform and go into Zapier in this video, but we can control the tags that people come in with, and that's a really important piece here. So if we were rolling out this new inbound channel for PPL using property leads, I would add a trigger, and the trigger is going to be a tag being added, and that tag is just property leads. And then I'm just going to name the trigger so we can kind of differentiate from these other ones. And now you see that's a new trigger. And if I save it, that then lets it kind of become accessible while we're building the workflow down here. So now I've added a new trigger. So any of these triggers will activate this workflow. And then boom, if that were the case, it would come in here and it's already tagged as property leads as a result of how it was pushed into the platform. The first thing we do is update two fields here. And both of these are very important to update, but I'm only really going to hone in on this one for this call. The primary contact type, we always want to associate whether this deal is coming from a seller, agent, or wholesaler. But, in this case, there will always be a seller if they're coming in from PPL. So we can infer that in this workflow. Anytime we can infer something from a workflow that they're in, meaning they're only going through this workflow if they're a seller, that means this might be a good opportunity to update this to them being a seller if that data point had not been associated previously. We know that we can do that because sellers go through this workflow and agents don't. But this is the workflow this is the field that I really want to touch on, as it will eventually relate into contact list or smart lists. So if I click here, you'll see all the various options that we could update it to. And again, you might have a field called contact disposition, Jack, since you've been with us for a while. We've updated that as we differentiated between sellers, agents, and wholesalers. So now we have a seller disposition and an agent disposition separately instead of a contact disposition. But the seller disposition is all we worry about in this workflow because, again, we know it's a seller. These are the options within seller disposition, but even then, we may have updated the options since you've joined. If you like these options more than you like the options on your own, or if you're just curious and you want a further breakdown later on, let us know and we can kind of elaborate and get you into the current version if you want to migrate into this. But really, this breaks it down between like a bucketing system because this is a single choice field type, meaning and you see we're updating it as soon as the contact comes in. So every seller that comes in is going to have a bucket selected, and it's a single choice field, so they will only have one bucket selected. So when they first come in, they're untouched. And if you see the parentheses, that's just my attempt at telling you guys how I intend to have you build a smart list to facilitate like properly managing that lead. But anyway, as soon as the lead comes in, we updated the seller disposition to untouched. And then right after that, we're going to land on this if else step. So whenever we're building a workflow, we can use an action called if else, which lets us build branches with filter criteria. So this says, based on the trigger that caused them to come into the workflow, we're going to guide them down one particular branch. And you see we've got one for iSpeed to lead, Google PPC, Lead Zolo, Facebook ad form, or if they were tagged as a Facebook lead. So you can even have multiple triggers to guide them down that branch. But ultimately, we're just saying they come in multiple different ways, and we're using logic to guide them down a branch. And the reason for that is just so we can update the contact field a little bit differently based on how they came in. If they came in by originally getting the tagged Lead Zolo, they were tagged as Lead Zolo, that triggered this workflow, they come down, they get this happening, they get this, and then they land here. And then based on the tagged Lead Zolo being the trigger, that would guide them down this Lead Zolo branch, which when they go down that branch, the field that gets updated is lead source and campaign name. So we have lead source PPL, as opposed to if you were doing Google PPC or Facebook, it might be just paid ads. And then campaign name is a second differentiating factor. So within PPL, who's the provider? So in this example, we update lead source to PPL and campaign name to lead Zolo. We've already updated the type to seller and the disposition to untouched. So you see we're kind of just associating a lot of data points that we can infer. That's kind of the idea here. Before I move into like what's gonna, like that's all kind of KPI tracking and some preemptive. Oh, actually one thing before I kind of pass it over for questions. Since I've added property leads as a trigger, it doesn't have a branch yet. I'm going to add a branch. So I'm going to go here and add a branch. This is going to be the branch that go down if the trigger was property leads. So I saved that and now it's a branch. And I can just copy these actions all here. And now I just need to change what these are updated to. So that one's fine, but this would be property leads instead. Anyway, so that's good. Anybody have questions about like the setup process here before we get into like, you know, what actually happens to the leads? Yes, Jack.
Question.
Yeah, so how are the leads, the piece I'm missing is how are the leads seeing that initial trigger? How do they arrive there?
So let's say you're doing your Facebook ads.
Yeah.
If you want to run your ads to a dedicated page, by the way, not that I'm a PPC guy or that this has been split tested or anything like that too crazy. But we do have a site in here that it is effective, you know, it will generate leads. But again, we haven't done a bunch of split testing. If you want to run your own ads, which I'm not an ads expert, you'd likely want to do split testing or even, you know, hire somebody to run them for you. But if you're managing your own campaigns and not doing PPL, you have a really good advantage of using an internal site here. So this one, seller site, we can set up your domain. So, you know, ours here is offers.opendispo.com just on the demo. And I usually just ignore that little tailing thread because it's not needed and it makes it look ugly. But this right here works. And you could run your ads to a page like this. And this is actually a perfect segue because this is a great way of highlighting. I know that if this particular form gets filled out, I can tag that contact a Facebook lead, which could put them into that process. Because this is an internal form, I can control, I can build a separate workflow that said, when this form is filled out, tag them as Facebook lead, or I could just add, which I have, this form is actually just another trigger in the workflow we were just looking at. So when
Okay.
the form gets filled out, that could be a trigger as well. And the added advantage if you are to run your own ads to your own landing page is you can control what they see next.
Yeah.
So they go to a booking page that syncs against your calendar, your acquisition person's calendar. And then and this is where it all converges. Like this is an added advantage of running your own. But if you guys can see my screen right here, this part will happen regardless of lead source. Let me see. Well, it should. It actually took a little while, a second or earlier today, so maybe it'll just be delayed. But I'm gonna get a notification. Like this is where, regardless of lead source, after tracking the KPI variables, they all converge back to the actionable part. So
Okay.
what
So for example, this week I bought 2 leads from my speed to lead, right? But they're not automatic. They send me an email saying there's a lead in Merrimack, New Hampshire. And I look at it and I say, yeah, that's a lead I want, and I buy it. I've been ending up copying and pasting the stuff into.
Nope, hit me up, buddy. We
Okay.
can set up a Zapier integration. So ISTL, you know, we've got a handful already built. We just copy it over. And what it is it's a Zapier integration that we have a Zapier account. We can set this up for you, but it's a webhook step into Lead Connector. So what's happening here is we can build one of these and name it after your company. And the step right here, catch hook, this is a web hook. And without
We're
getting,
not seeing your screen, by the way.
oh my gosh. So this is a Zapier integration right here.
Yeah.
Just trigger an action, similar to what we were looking at, but this is in Zapier, an external platform. We'll build these for you and provide you with this webhook URL.
Okay.
And you plug that into iSpeed Delete with the CRM integration section of the website over there.
Yeah.
It will trigger that every time you get a lead, whether it's the monthly subscription type or the a la carte type.
Yeah.
If you buy a lead, it'll execute the hook, which will push it in. And what I meant earlier was we can push it in with a very particular tag. So we push in all those variables for the data along with this tag.
Yeah.
That tag being added is what activates that workflow.
Okay. Yeah, I could use that. Yeah, I could definitely use that. I've been buying some stuff from them. I've been buying some stuff from Need to Sell My House Fast as well. And
Yeah.
I have used property leads in the past, but not recently.
Yeah, they're, I don't have experience with them, but we have a client who got a lot of, a very high percentage of contracts from a relatively low number of leads from them. So I'm kind of a believer now, or I'm definitely a believer now in those guys. Anyway, so let's move into like what happens when any of those triggers actually happen. So of course now they're already marked as untouched seller disposition, which I'll touch back on here in a minute. But once they all consolidate after getting their KPI variables logged, we add a tag for inbound lead. We assign it to somebody on your team. We notify that team member, new inbound lead. Oh, and actually I've been meaning to change this. I usually do it for you guys when I'm setting it up, but I prefer to say new inbound lead from campaign.name, which pulls in that variable that we've updated up above. So if they came from Leadzolo, it'll say new inbound lead from Leadzolo. And then you saw it also notifies you with the contact's name. So new inbound lead from Leadzolo, Rick Sheldon, press 1 to connect. And then while you're getting that notification, your phone should ring, which I'll have to see why mine did not a second ago. Oh, I think I was already in the workflow potentially. We'll see. But when the notification hits the acquisition manager's phone, they will also get a call at the same exact moment. So when they answer, it'll say the same thing in their ear. It'll say new inbound lead from Leadzolo, press 1 to connect. And then we have this setting right here, stop on response. This works with any of the non-AI type of messages, like a call. If that call connects, it counts it as a response, and it will pull them out of this workflow, preventing any future steps if that first call connects. But assuming that call doesn't connect because either your phone doesn't ring like mine didn't, or your acquisition person is unavailable to answer it, like they answered it but said like, nope, I'm too busy, I can't do that right now. Or they tried to call but the seller didn't answer. If the call didn't connect, then it waits 1 minute and then it continues on. We turn the chat on, specifically the active bot being one that's geared towards understanding that these are inbound paid ads. And it doesn't really change how it approaches the situation entirely, but it does understand the context of the situation. Then we send them a message here. Hey, we received your information. Thank you. Happy to take a deeper dive on 123 Main Street. Since we're already buying there, do you have a few minutes to chat today? So if you don't like that, you can change it right here in this bot override message action. But if you leave it, that'll go out a minute after the call was unsuccessful. Then what it's set up to do right now is wait 30 minutes. Again, if we've not received a response, it'll send a follow-up text. something like not quite a soft breakup, but you know, it feels to them like, hey, you know, balls in your court type of thing, even though we are going to continue following up. We haven't heard from you. If you need anything, reach out. And then what we do after that is now we've got a 90-minute clock ticking, meaning 2 hours after the inbound lead came in, or actually 2 hours and 1 minute after the lead came in, if they haven't responded to the call and they haven't responded to either of these 2 text messages, this is where we circle back to the contact or seller disposition. We automatically update to discovery if they have not responded. So that's where we'll go next, is kind of how to utilize these smart lists around these seller dispositions. But just understand before I move on, when this happens, it's going to remove the tag untouched. It's going to remove them from any untouched workflow. It's going to apply a discovery tag, and it's going to add them to a discovery sequence. The default discovery sequence, if you guys have not edited it, is a text and an email every day for a week, then every other day for a following week, then every week for a couple of weeks. And then similarly to this, if they don't respond to any of that within 5 weeks or so, it will automatically update to cold follow-up, which is an auto nurture loop. So really, I mean, not that you guys should never let this happen, but if a lead came in and you never connected with them and you never really did anything, it would automatically like be nurturing them indefinitely. So that's the inbound system, and I do want to touch briefly on the contact list, but I also want to touch on something else really quickly before I leave this page. Based on a couple of a little bit of feedback I've gotten recently, I've actually built in an improvement, or I guess like a guardrail to this workflow for a couple people, and it's about time that we put it in.
Good to go.
Yeah, exactly. So what we got going on is we get the notification regardless, but let's say it's after business hours. I can add an if-else logic step above the call to kind of like start to isolate this and make it so different things happen based on different events. So let's say it's after business
Seller for Lambert.
hours. So we will determine that based on what? There's a date time criteria. So we can apply date time and then current hour. So if the current hour is on or before, let's say 8 a.m., and then we can add a condition and do or current hour is on or after, let's say 8 p.m. So if it's between 8 and 8, then it's fair game to call your acquisition person. If it's outside those hours, you know, we can maybe let the acquisition person sleep. So if it's after hours, then we can just do a go-to step here, which will consolidate here, which is similar to how this worked. You know, the go-to step just redirects somebody. So if they were after business hours, we just skip the call to your teammate, and then we just text the person here. And one more change that I made based on feedback was maybe this 2 hours, and this is really a preference. I think 2 hours I think shorter is good, but some people think this is pretty aggressive, and I agree it is aggressive. So if your style is not so aggressive, then maybe instead of 2 hours after they come in and then you push them into discovery, maybe we do, you know, 6 hours minimum. Maybe we wait 6 hours instead. And also maybe we want to add a window that lets it only happen within certain time frames. So we wait at least 6 hours, and we also don't want to text them until 8 a.m.
Rick, I have a question.
Mhm.
When you're saying I can and we can, um, what is the status of this? Is this something that is applied for all of our accounts and you're showing how we can further customize it? Or are you showing the potential of the things that we could build should we want them? I'm missing that context.
That first option is exactly the case, but also we can help, you know, we can help update these if you guys are like, I definitely want that new update, but I have no idea how to do it. we can do it for you, but yeah, the purpose of this recording is really twofold. It's one, just to explain these concepts. Secondly,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a guide if you are handy enough to follow along. I'm going through granularly enough that you could follow the video and build it if we were too slow for you or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're willing
We're-
to give you guys the new ones if you guys reach out to us about any updates that you kind of see. You see me talking about something, but you're like, I signed up 3 months ago and I don't have that new thing. It's not like it's instantaneous, but we can push things back.
Well, everyone on your team, I give my compliments ad nauseum about you guys being skillful integrators, and your depth of understanding of the system it's incredible. I learn something every time I observe. What I face as a challenge is being able to bridge the granularity that we talk about here and being able to provide my team prescriptive guidance. You're new to real estate. You need to use the Open Dispo CRM, having them understand even that there is an automation to go to and understand that what that workflow does and that granularity. I just think is a burden that we can't overcome with them. I'm looking for how do you do X, do Y, do Z, do them repeatedly, and then in time, maybe you're an integrator, maybe you need to work that stuff.
You guys are perfect. It's like I fed you the questions for these segues, because that is the perfect segue into basically smart lists, which is like the thing I really want to hammer on, because all this stuff I've told you, to your point, is you almost don't even need to worry about it, especially your end users definitely don't. Your end users have no business being in these folders. You as a manager might want to play around with them, or maybe you just want to know it's available and reach out to us to help you update it. But yeah, your end users, they should worry about smart lists. So let's talk about that next. Smart lists, if anybody is coming from Podio, it's called views. Smart lists are preset filter criteria that apply to your contact database. So just to really quickly clarify, a lot of people work their deals out of pipeline views here. And just quickly, I'm sure I've explained this in other videos, but there's a limitation with this platform where if you're working out of pipeline views and you have a lot of leads in one stage and you're like halfway down, so you scroll down to the 50th person, you work John Smith, you click into it, it goes into their contact page. And then when you want to go to the next lead, you have to click back and reload the pipeline from the top. Remember who you were working on, scroll down, find him, find the next person. And that's very distracting. It's very inefficient. Contact lists are the much better way to work through a targeted list for an end user. So I've been mentioning these seller dispositions. We also have agent disposition field, which admittedly is less fleshed out than the seller disposition field. There's fewer nurture sequences tied into it, but there's a field called agent disposition as well as seller disposition, and those are not the only filter criteria that you might want to build smart lists around, but it's a very powerful one. So let's say that we want to go in and you see these lists here. If I click into contacts, you see I have these lists up here. These are called smart lists, and they're not unfortunate. So when you sign up for Open Dispo and you get the full snapshot that I have, the one thing that doesn't come in is smart lists. It's really weird, but we actually have to build smart lists individually for every account. And it's really fine, I guess, because it helps me emphasize the point that even you guys should definitely get familiar with how to navigate smart lists, because it's just a really useful part of the platform. And if I want to build a smart list, I go to here, which I default to the all list. This is showing all your contacts in chronological order, meaning the newest ones are on top. If I click on more filters here, I can apply a filter, basically using any field from in the platform, including seller disposition. So I want to see all my contacts who have a seller disposition of untouched. In the context of these inbound leads, that's going to show me all of the leads who have come in within the last 2 hours or 6 hours, if you did the change that I just made. So I'm going to apply that as a filter. That filters out the whole data set. And then I can save it as a smart list here. And you would want to save it as untouched, triple dial. And this is something we can also help you with, but really I don't want to downplay the fact that you guys should become comfortable building smart lists. Like I almost don't even want to do it for you because you guys should get the motion down of building some of these and making sure that you're not overwriting previous ones and things like that. So I've built the smart list and nobody's there. It's a live filter, it's like a live filter set. So if I go into, oh, and by the way, that tells me that the workflow is broken somewhere, that in this demo account, I think it's because I was already in the workflow actually. But anyway, if I change this disposition to untouched, I will now show up in that untouched list. So as you have 10, 20 people, in this list, let's just add one more contact just to really drive this point home. Oh, I accidentally put my own info in again. Put my alter ego. Okay, so now we will have two contacts in here. And I was already tagged as untouched. And now I'm going to put this contact as untouched as well. So now this will demonstrate the biggest efficiency improvement you gain by working from smart lists. So when you click into your untouched list and you click into one of your contacts, now you have an arrow that lets you go from one contact to the next seamlessly to avoid clicking back, reloading the pipeline from the top, scrolling down, finding the person, finding the next person. All that's avoided by just clicking next. So if you guys get in the habit of building smart lists for each end user to manage a responsibility that they have, that's the most efficient way for the end user to work through multiple leads. And then what it comes down to is, okay, we've got multiple contact dispositions or seller dispositions. Let me click into a contact and show you those options actually. So we've got untouched. If, maybe they come in from Bateman Collective or like a very high value lead provider. Maybe you want to handle them a unique way. Maybe they've gone through the 6 hours or 2 hours and they've been pushed into discovery. Maybe they've been deemed bad lead, or they want retail price and you refer them to an agent. Whatever the situation is, this bucketing system being single choice is a really good system because it helps you make sure they're tagged with only one status at a time and they're only added into like one nurture sequence at a time. So the first thing that happens by clicking cold follow-up, for example, is that it will remove, let me just show you here, like in the contact list, if I catch it quick enough, it's still tagged as, oh yeah, no, I did not get it quick enough. So it had removed the tag untouched or whatever. And now if I give it another second, go back, it's tagged with the current status, cold follow-up. So when you change that disposition, it removes the tag from the previous one. It removes the workflow that they may have been in. It adds the current tag and then it adds them to a current workflow. In this case, cold follow-up is tied to a nurture sequence. So it just initiated that. So you see these different lists for these different buckets. Now imagine you have a relatively scaled up team, meaning you're not just a one-man show. You've got follow-up specialists, you've got acquisition managers, you've got dispo people. These buckets basically should belong to a role on the team. So your follow-up special, and I'm not going to define who, like there's such a team structure is so unique that I'll let you guys assign these to people. But imagine you had a follow-up specialist who every day they know they should go to this list and call them 3 times. after they call everybody on that list, they should go here, and anybody who's, got a certain tag, meaning they've been there for 90 days without being touched, they should call them. Then they go to barely interested and they put them in, maybe they even take that list and they move it into a multi-line dialer. Like each bucket should be owned by a role on the team, and those buckets should be handled in a very specific way. And this is where it's getting into me, where I'll say, okay, like I'll put it on you guys for two reasons. One, we just haven't yet built more to educate you on like exactly who should do what and what the SOPs for each of these buckets are. The reason for that's because these are changing. Like we just landed on this exact set of buckets last week. So that's part of it. But the other part is, it's up to you. Maybe these leads you don't even care about. Maybe you want to auto nurture them. Maybe you want to put them in a multi-line dialer. Maybe you want to dial them one at a time through this platform. It's up to you and your team how you want to do it. But this field is really critical. And then, back to the whole point of this call in general, understanding inbound. It's just understanding that when they come in, we automatically update to untouched. Now, boom, they're already in a bucket. So this helps us make sure the leads don't fall through the cracks. They're in a bucket, and they should always be in a bucket. And we can change the buckets together, or you can change them on your own. But this field is a really big part of the platform, and I cannot overemphasize that you should utilize this field, and you should utilize smart lists to go with it.
Do you completely abandon pipeline and stages then?
No, I don't. And this is, again, perfect segue, because that was another ancillary topic I wanted to touch on here. And again, with the theme of like, if you guys see something you like, let me know and we can make it happen. But anybody who signs up by default, these pipelines under the opportunity menu item, you click here and you see all the different pipelines. We've got prospecting for direct mail. That's, seller specific, but it's dedicated because it's got its own unique process. We've got 3 acquisition pipelines. So if you're doing agent outreach or JV deals or seller deals or any combination of those, this platform has been built with a lot of care to allow, or basically to cater to any of those business models, or to cater to people who may be doing any of those business models. The seller pipeline, what we've got for default stages, they do not actually correlate with the options on that field. And in my head, the reason why is because the field represents a status and the stages represent where the deal is in the process of being bought. In my head, it's a pretty stark contrast, but I've gotten more and more feedback on why the hell don't these stages match these options? And it would be really nice if I could click a button and it moves it in the pipeline. And I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole of why we didn't do that, but it does relate to instances where one contact might be tied to more than one deal. So agents and JV deals it's very common that one deal provider sends you multiple deals. So because of that, we've worked within the limitation of the thing I just mentioned. So we don't actually use the button clicks to move them in the pipelines. But we've been getting a lot of clients from a particular mentorship lately, and that particular mentorship focuses on only direct to seller. And a lot of the people have been just like distracted or confused by all these additional pipelines and fields and templates and all these things. So somebody doing all those potential business models might love how it's built by default, but somebody who's doing only seller stuff might appreciate this new option, which Jack, I'll let you speak in just a sec, but this new version of the snapshot that's available to you guys works in that way. So we've removed everything we could think of that's related to JV deals and agent outreach. This is a seller-focused model, and as such, the limitation with duplicate opportunities is it will happen like less than 1% of the time. Most of the time, sellers are tied to one deal. So because of, if you're doing direct to seller only, and you're wanting that efficiency increase and you're willing to live with the limitation related to duplicates, now in the seller model, we do have the stages in the acquisition pipeline reflect these options. And by doing that, we can say when we click discovery, we add it to the sequence, we update the tags the same way we did before. And then in addition to that, we can move it in the pipeline.
Pretty slick. I think you're going to continue to have that tension between those dispositions not matching the pipelines. And I'm not an advocate that they need to, but back to my point is like a lot of the folks on these acquisition teams, they're learning real estate. They're learning how to make calls. They're learning sales. And the pipeline, the stages are the absolute simplest thing that anyone could understand in the CRM.
The only
So,
problem is the efficiency of, having to go to the 50th lead, reloading it. It's almost like I dug my heels in the sand, like, no, I'm not going to make a match because you should be using Smart List. That was kind of part of the premise or part of the idea there. But,
Yeah.
give the people what they want.
Yeah, is there training that is focused on those new to real estate and just 101 what they need to do to be effective in the system? Because I'm challenged as much as was shared in here. It's hard to say what is that 3 to 5 minutes and how do I articulate that and constantly train a team because there's a lot of turnover. So is there that kind of pre-flight checklist, just the minimum you need to do to be effective in the system that's geared towards someone in acquisitions that's making calls, not to somebody who's got an integrator type of role?
No, I mean, so that's what I would do to that person is, hey, you go to the untouched Smart List, you go to the discovery list, you go to this list, you clean those out, you call everybody on that list every day, something like that. More like they don't even, maybe, and here's one more thing. You can build, actually, I want to answer Jack's question, but then you guys can remind me if you can. We can build a Smart List that exactly mirrors a pipeline stage by using 2 filter criteria, the pipeline stage and the pipeline status. So by doing those 2 filters, you can look at everybody in a stage and have them call through a Smart List, but they're calling everybody in the stage. So it's like it's the same thing, but it's way more efficient. All right, Jack, what's your question?
It's really not, I guess, so my CRM doesn't, there's a few significant things that don't look like yours. On the sidebar, I don't have buyer intake or deal intake. And I love what you're doing there I've made smart lists for myself, that have kind of like that similar thing, like, okay, I've talked to them, but they're not ready or, whatever. And I've made lists like that. But you had that whole button list there. I don't believe I have that anywhere in my contacts. So I'm wondering how, can kind of just get a refresh where basically everything that you've got today is current in mind.
Yep, we can do that. We are actually already doing that. We're already pushing a lot of things in, but it's a bit of a manual process. So we'll just bump you up. Daniel, are you there? And Jack, are you doing sellers only still, or are you getting into agents or anything?
No, basically just sell. Yeah, just direct to seller.
Do you want us to build the corresponding pipeline like I showed, or is your pipeline fine?
Well, I could, if those pipelines are there, I could, I get where they are and what all of that. So I could probably institute them. But what I'm most interested in that you showed today is delineating where a seller may be, and then having that smart list show them.
Yep, Daniel, would you add that to our list as put him higher on the priority list?
Yeah, sure.
All right, thanks.
And then, of course, obviously the trigger stuff. I don't have. I still don't quite have the trigger things down.
The trigger. Oh, you mean like when you change?
Yeah, like I speed to lead. You have a webhook. I have some carrot, and 1 or 2 of the carrot ones work, but then other ones don't. I guess depending on what page on my website the lead comes from. So I may need to kind of take your advice there in terms of landing page or whatever.
Yeah, and for any of those integrations, if you guys have a new lead source coming online or you have an issue with one that we've already set up, a support ticket would be good as well, which is actually a good time to talk about a couple different support options because we've moved a couple things around. So up here in the support drop down, the getting started, you guys may have found this call from this page. If you are getting started, this might be useful. This is the way, by the way, right here, to tap into Bateman Collective as a PPC agency, which is a really great agency, and you know they've got a really good conversion rate. Like they focus on getting deals that could sell more than just more leads. So that's a really good source. And also down here is these calendar links to sign up for these group calls. So under that next menu item, knowledge base, this is a searchable database of go high level specific videos. These are not built around the real estate build out yet. I'm going to be adding more articles in here for my build, but this is like a go high level specific support engine. And then that relates into this button right here as well. This is also a general go high level support functionality. If you submit a ticket to us, but it's, I don't know, like midnight on Saturday, then it might take a while. But this is more of a 24/7 support. If your question is not geared around my build or our best practices, then you could rely on this to get some general go high level questions answered. And there's articles and tours as well, which are kind of cool. But anyway, this right here, submit a ticket. This is the best way to get in direct contact with my team and have a support ticket land in our purview. So you can just go ahead and submit one of those and say, hey, I've got iSpeed to lead and need to sell my house fast and carrot, and we need to get these things integrated.
Beautiful. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? And by the way, I do realize that sometimes I speak quickly and I try to do it like concisely so that sometimes the recording of this call is even more valuable being here because you can slow it down and look step by step. That's why I don't try to belabor points and talk about the same thing multiple times. But if you were to go back and watch this video, you could see how those logic steps worked and the tags and webhooks and Zapier and all that stuff. Oh, one more support option I forgot about based on that comment. School here. This is the live school event or school community that you guys can join if you haven't already. I see a couple of unanswered questions. So, you know, I try my approach to this place is I'm not going to rush in and put a quick response that might just get your question answered. I want to like wait till I have a good chunk of time and put a really thoughtful response together that everybody else can get value from. So hopefully you guys, you know, appreciate that. But in here, there's a post. Maybe I should pin it actually. I definitely should pin it. It's right here. Group training call log. So this will be will continue to be expanded on with these call recordings. So you can go back and watch previous ones.
Very nice.
Yeah,
All right.
that's good to have that.
Yep, I think that's all I had on my agenda, but I'm good to hang out for a couple minutes if you guys have a couple more questions on this stuff.
Hey, Rick, I have a question.
Mhm.
You actually showed it on the thing, on the school. So pass and stops. Where do where do those go? Like if somebody says, you know, if we're getting the automated messages, and so they want to opt out. Where do they go after that? Do they stay in the current pipeline or stage or wherever that they're in, or do they go somewhere?
If they say if anybody ever replies the word stop to you, it's a Twilio, something I can't even control. Twilio will
Right.
basically opt them out automatically. but and that can be used, like you can do more than just that. But by default, yeah, that's all that happens is just they get marked as DND. But a
Mhm.
quick workflow automation could do whatever you want with that. So put automation, create one, and one of the filter criteria that's really awesome. Oh, and holy crap, I'll talk about this next week. Anybody doing wrap deals? We have a really awesome wrap dispo process coming online related to, or at least it's triggered by a similar thing. When we get a reply, so customer replied is the trigger, and one of the filters we can add is contains phrase. So when somebody replies stop, we could maybe wait a second and check to see if they're DND'd because maybe the stop was included in a bigger message and it wasn't them out. Who knows? This is that now that I'm talking about it, I probably would not institute this personally because of the fact that it might apply to people that you did not intend it to apply to. But if they reply stop, then you could activate a workflow and remove them from workflows or opportunities or something. But there's an example. I would not want to do this because if somebody said, I tried to stop the auction, but I need your help, we don't want to delete those.
Right. So what I'm coming up with is, so a lot of people, well, once those go out, some people will say pass. And if they've already been a lead for me, I'm still going to look at it. We'll go back in, look at the notes, see what happened. And then I'm going to reply back to them anyway and say, hey, like, so the reply is going to come from my account. I mean, my number, not the number that was probably sent to them. So I'm saying, hey, this is Harvey. I haven't talked to you in a while. Are you still interested in selling blank, 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 right? And for some reason, once I message them myself and then refer to something that happened in our last call, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm still looking to sell, even though they said pass. I think it just has something to do with that, that pass, that stop, that unsubscribe in that message, that they just automatically do it. But when I go back and reply to them, I think it happened 3 or 4 times, like in the past day or so. I got them back now. Now we're going to go see another house, and the guy got 3 duplexes. So. But then there are the people that it doesn't make sense. I looked at it, their first note was, and they really didn't want to sell or something like that, or it was just something terrible where I just didn't want to continue to follow up with them. And I would rather have them move to like another stage or something, even if it's a stage that says pass or unsubscribe or something like that, where I can go back in there later, but at least I don't have to go through all of them, right there.
Imagine the differentiation between these two fields. Bad lead, no longer interested. Maybe that's where you say, boom, they did a hard opt out. They're absolutely not interested. I'm never following up. But maybe barely interested is you cycle later. So I think it relates to the dispositions. The part that you mentioned about stop and the actual opt out component, that's a little bit different. But
right.
As far as bucketing them into some place to follow up in a targeted way, boom, barely interested would apply there. And then you have a contact list for people who are barely interested.
Okay. Got it. And then, so you remember like day one, I was one of the ones that was like, hey, get JV and wholesale or like agents like out of there for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's been done, but is there a way with what I saw that you had, the different, what's it called?
Focus.
Yeah. So is there a way that I can get, like a clean version of that or?
Yeah, absolutely. That must have fallen through our radar because I don't remember that. So yeah, we'll throw you up at the top of the list. So we will basically be deleting a lot of stuff out and then installing a snapshot, but we'll do it in a way where we're communicating with you while we're doing it, and it will not impact any conversation history or notes. So we have to kind of, communicate while we're doing that and make sure that we're not deleting any relevant fields or things like that. So by the way,
that's cool.
You know, like I think we're pretty good at understanding the implications of these things, but things might have, if you guys ever want a big transition, you know, stuff happens sometimes. So
Right.
keep that in mind. So I think for you, it is a big enough lift to be worth the risk. And it's not a big risk. We'll really try to do it carefully, but just to kind of warn everybody, you know, when we're deleting fields and deleting pipelines and deleting stuff, like, you know, we might want to take precautions, maybe export your data, maybe tag it, then export it, and just make sure that even though we're being very careful, that, you know, stuff might happen.
Okay. All righty.
All right,
Thanks.
cool.
Could I ask a quick question? What's the LOI generator button? I think the purple one inside contacts.
So that is actually a thing that Myron Briley built. It's it's not anything that we built. It's just a link to something. So we can build these custom contact buttons up here. This one in particular is nothing that we've built. It's just a link that we can add in if you have a preferred like Google Sheet that you like to use as a template here. But actually that brings on, I think I should probably delete that because there's a better version of the LOI generator, I think. We can actually go to payments. I know it's a weird spot for it, but it's because Go High Level's truly a digital marketing platform, not a real estate platform. Payments is more natural where most people using this platform use documents and contracts. So you can create templates of documents and contracts. And this is a pretty cool e-signature platform. It's a newer feature. So it's got a couple things that I can tell are missing that will be coming soon. Like, for example, when this is completed, it does store it in a contract section, but it does not yet store it in that contacts record. But that's something that when you go to that section, it says coming soon. So you know Go High Level's going to fix it, but it's a little bit limited so far, but it's really cool. You can just put your text, you can put, you know, images, you can put signatures and fillable text fields and date fields and initials and all that. So you can build out your template and then you can use it by sending it to a person. So when you use it, you know, just like DocuSign, it goes to their inbox and yours, and it says, you know, this company has sent you a proposal, click here to sign it. Then it opens it up and it's a pretty clean process. But and this is how I would do the LOIs. You know, if I were sending LOIs, which by the way, well, I won't get into that too much because a lot of people have a ton of success sending LOIs, but personally, I think there's more opportunity sending contracts. And this is taking a while to load, so you can't really see it, but the next page here would have just let me choose. It would let me choose which contact in the system I want to send it to.